Welcome to the Tropical Atlantic Marine Weather Briefing for Thursday, July 9th. The hazard that we're looking at for the weekend ahead is a Caribbean gale warning that is in effect for Friday night and Saturday night offshore Colombia, as well as for the Gulf of Venezuela. We'll also be watching some strong trade winds that will pulse nightly in the Gulf of Honduras and off the northern coast of Hispaniola. And the tropics remain quiet with no tropical storm formation expected for the next 7 days. Here's a look at our Atlantic maps today with winds on the left and waves, seas on the right, and a pretty typical early summer weather pattern has set up over the basin with high pressure dominating the northern waters and trade winds dominating the southern waters. If you take a look at the area of concern, we've got some strong trades over the Caribbean, and those are generating some rough seas in the central and southwestern Caribbean as well. For Friday, the gradient between the high pressure over the central Atlantic and lower pressure over South America will lead to a little bit of an increase in the winds, and that's when we'll see the gale conditions develop across the south central Caribbean with pulses of strong winds by Friday night over the Gulf of Honduras as well as offshore Hispaniola. For Saturday, very little change in the overall synoptic pattern, with high pressure dominating the northern waters, creating very quiet conditions, and then those trade winds across the southern waters enhanced over the central Caribbean, with the gale conditions again developing over the waters offshore Colombia and in the Gulf of Venezuela by Saturday night, with those pulses of strong trade winds in the similar areas as previous nights. And then this broad area shaded in green on the seas, where seas will be 8 to 10 to 12 feet, with even some higher seas in the areas shaded in orange. For Sunday, the pattern remains pretty unchanged. Quiet conditions across the northern waters, including the Gulf, with the strongest trade winds being over the central Caribbean. And by evening and overnight, Sunday night into early Monday morning, we'll look at for the possibility of some gale conditions developing off the coast of South America. By Monday, the pressure gradient may relax just a bit, so we may no longer have strong winds offshore Hispaniola and over the Gulf of Honduras. Winds may diminish a bit down to fresh, and winds may only be near gale force across the south central Caribbean, but still a broad area of strong winds, and then a very broad area of rough seas across much of the central and southwestern portions of the Caribbean. And then finally, as we go on into Tuesday, still very little change. The high pressure that's going to be anchored between Bermuda and the Azores remains the dominant feature on the map, with trade winds continuing across the deep tropics. The highest trade winds strong to near gale force across the central Caribbean, and that's where the highest seas, rough seas, 8 to 11 feet, will continue. So in conclusion, we have the gale warning in effect for Friday night and Saturday night offshore Colombia and for the Gulf of Venezuela. That may be extended into at least Sunday night. And then during that same time period, pulses of strong easterly winds are expected for the Gulf of Honduras and offshore Hispaniola. Thanks for joining me on today's Tropical Atlantic Marine Weather Briefing. Our next one will be posted on Sunday, July 12th by 6 p.m. Eastern Time.